Alright, here's going to be the real part 1 of the Z32 transmission on the rb25 engine swap or conversion or whatever you want to call it. I've seen a lot of things on the forums about how it's done. The guy came and dropped out the new transmission 2 days ago, so I'm going to show you a couple things that I've picked up and how we're going to swap over bell housings, driveline, shifter, whatever needs to be done. And that being said, I'll show you real quick how to pull the bell housing off of the Z32 transmission. Alright, so before you do anything, you're going to pull the drain plug, get all the fluid out of there if there's any fluid left. And then, before you remove the bolts out of the housings, because once you remove the bolts, both housings will want to separate, and you don't want the back housing to separate or else you're going to have to reseal it, and that involves taking it completely off. So, these bolts here are going to be removed. First you're going to take this big bolt out. Behind that is a spring and a little ball bearing. That's what locks it into place, and it kind of gives it that rotation. So this is your shifter, lock, whatever. Anyways, so you pull that out, pull the big bolt out, then the spring and the ball will come out, and then you can take this bolt out, which will bring this entire plate out with it. Then you're going to come in here and turn on the light, and you're going to remove all of the bolts on the inside as well as all this good shit. I'll remove that in a second. So you're going to remove this plate, and then you can remove the bolts here. So when you do that, you'll essentially prop this up. You can put a pad down or a little rubber mat so you don't damage this, but put it up on its end, pull the bolts out, and then hammer on each edge around it, and it'll basically pop it loose, and you'll be able to pull the transmission right out. So that being said, let's go ahead and get started on pulling bolts and shit. Actually, I lied. I'm going to do the shifter first, because this bracket will not work for my car. So this is set up so that you can put a bolt here through your transmission tunnel, and it'll hold this in place while your transmission goes up and down. This will go up and down as well, and keep vibration off of the shifter. So what we need to do is take the bolts out of here, separate this here, and then I'll show you guys the new bracket once all of this is off. Alrighty, so we got the old shifter bracket off, and like I said, it's just the 2 bolts on each side underneath these, which go into here, and then you have to take the bolt out of the shifter if your shifter is still in. Since mine was, it's just a quick bolt out of here. So now what we need to do is we need to separate this, or we need to pull this off. There's 2 ways of doing it. You can either bend these little ears back, or cut right here and then pull this ear off and then pull this ear off, and this will replace it by going just like that on the little, I can't remember what those things are called right now, but it'll just clamp onto that, and then your shifter will then go onto this, and it'll be a fine and dandy day after this is on, because that looks sick. But I'm going to clean the transmission up, and I'm actually going to pull the bell housing and get everything going on that aspect, and then we'll worry about putting that on after everything's clean and the bell housing's off. Got the old linkage off. Apparently it's a lot easier than I thought it would be, because all you have to do is take 2 pry bars. So let's see, how is it set up? Alright, so it sits on around that, and then around this one, and you just have to take 2 pry bars and pry up against these 2 tabs. Kind of like just stick it in and then pry outwards, and it'll effectively bend it just enough so you can pull it off. Now, the new bracket, which I'm not going to put on at this moment because it's clean and that stuff is not, will just mount directly in its place, just like that, and then the shifter will go on there, and this will kind of move it back and forth and do what it needs to do. But I'm still in the process of cleaning all of this shit up because there's a lot of grease and grime that I don't want to have to deal with later. So I'm going to continue to clean this up, and then we'll worry about mounting all the rear hardware up. Cool. So for those of my friends that watch the YouTube channel and are my friend on Facebook, we got a live stream going on working on the transmission. Like I said earlier, we're going to be pulling these two bolts. This is the shifter ball bearing switch. I don't know exactly what it's called, but it keeps the shifter kind of locked in place. But since that bolt's out now, it's not exactly locked in. So we're going to pull this bolt. Then we're going to go get the handy dandy magnet. Let's see. I heard you like mud chips. What the hell is mud chips? Oh, god damn it. My magnet's not big enough. Need a different magnet. Oh, I have gotten the main cover off, which I showed you guys before. This one actually had a seal on it. I'll probably just put some RTV to reseal. Looks like this one had some sort of RTV at one point. But we got the snap rings off, so we got this snap ring, so this is going to come off. We'll throw this over here with that so we don't lose it. And we got the main snap ring off of this one. So now what we need to do is take the main bolts out of the bell housing, and the bell housing will pop, or should, in theory, pop right off. So let's get going. Since the snap rings have been removed, we took all the bolts up until they were loose, and then basically beat around the base of this with a rubber mallet. Do not use steel, you will break the aluminum. But now that it's separated, we can go ahead and lift the rear housing off. And it looked like the front, or the front housing, the bell housing, it looks like the rear bell housing stayed sealed, so that's a good thing. That means we won't have to retake anything apart and reseal that side. We just have to run some RTV through here and we'll be good to go. So, got the bell housing off. All the parts are over here. Just swung by Nissan in Olympia to get a new gasket for this front cover. It was a pain in the ass to find, but we got it. Now we're going to work on removing the bolts on the bell housing back here, and on the other side. Hopefully I don't have to remove the wiring harness and all that good shit, but yeah, so we gotta get that off, and then we're gonna jack the car up and hopefully pull the transmission out tonight. So this way we can get the bell housing swapped over and get the transmission back in the car so we can get the drive shaft measured and then sent off tomorrow. Now that the car is all jacked up, we actually got room to play underneath quite a bit. Checked it with the other bell housing to make sure we have plenty of room. Got the upper bolt on this side of the engine, but I'm having a bitch with this one because of the wiring harness and all that's over here. But I did get the starter out. That's loose, just kind of sitting here. And yeah, just need to work my way up to that bolt. I think you guys can see it right there. Little bastard. There it is. But yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and drain the fluid and see how just as sparkly it is and show you guys. Also remove the other two bolts that are on the side and then the last one that's up top, and we should be good to pull the transmission out after I pull the driveline off, which that's just a couple bolts, so no problem there. So let's get bugging. Alrighty, so I managed to get to the bolt. I have to go in between my wiring harness, underneath my heater core lines, and then back up, and I can get 2 fingers on it. And then boom, just like that. Now getting it back in is going to be a totally different story. That's going to suck. But that's off, and since I never actually connected this vent, I'm just going to let it fall. All that was is to vent the transmission, so when you go through a big puddle in Australia, it doesn't fucking flood your transmission, or any other transmission for that matter. But I got the bolt all done there. Now I just have to take the 2 out of the bottom, or 2 out of the sides, and then the bell, or the drive shaft, and then it'll be good to remove, after I drain the fluid, of course. I got the transmission drained out, and this is what we're looking at. It's not as bad as I thought it was going to be, but it's still pretty bad. And it's not nearly as bad as that first transmission. So, we're going to get it pulled out and inspect further. Also, I think I need to straighten my engine and transmission because my drive line's at more of an approach angle than I thought it was. So, we're going to work on that. Also, there was a bunch of metal shavings on plug. I think you guys can see it. You can see it good enough. Yeah, you can see them. Alright, so metal shavings on the plug. Oh god. Metallicness there. So, let's get this transmission out, yo. The old transmission out, and I got Jana pulling the front cover off, and so this way I don't have to do as much work and I can take a break.
Thanks.
Just pulling we're going to do the same thing that we did on the old transmission. We're going to pull the bolts out of the front casing, pull the snap rings out, pull these two bolts. This bolt holds a spring and a little ball bearing that keeps this from popping into each gear. And then, yeah, then we'll pull these out and smack this bell housing off, and then RT it onto that one. God, you're noisy. Alright, back to work. Now that the transmissions are torn apart, thanks to Jen for the help. And I'm going to go ahead and end this video here. So this is going to be part 1. Part 2 coming up next. That's going to be reinstalling the bell housing and doing the part I haven't done yet. So stay tuned. Don't forget to like, subscribe. If you know somebody that is working on this, share the video so they know how to do it as well. It's not that hard. As long as you got it figured out and the transmission pulled out and you got a second transmission, you're good to go. So, take it easy guys, and as always, stay sideways. 1, 2, 3, 4.